In this video, I'm sharing with you 4 things you should know about core bracing and low back pain. This is a video for anyone out there that may not understand how to properly brace their core or may have difficulty with bracing. Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Coach Remy here. With today's new video, I'm sharing with you 4 things you should know about core bracing. One of the common issues I see with a new client that is starting out is they don't know how to properly brace their core or what core bracing is. And a lack of a proper brace can lead to the onset of low back pain when carrying a weight or lifting a weight. So with today's video, my goal is to help educate you about what core bracing is and 4 things that you should consider or take into account when bracing your core and how to brace. So without further ado, let's jump into tip number 1. For tip number 1, you're not sucking in your stomach. That's not how to brace properly. Rather, you want to actively stabilize the spine by almost flexing or bracing the spine. And to use an example, if I were to take my elbow here, now I can move it back and forth, my elbow joint here. Now, if I flex my bicep as hard as I can't move the elbow joint. The elbow joint is now stiffened and stabilized. But as soon as I relax, I can now move it. You want to think about applying that same brace that I just did to your core. So you're actively engaging your abdominals, obliques to help stiffen up and stabilize your spine. That is what a proper brace would look like, not sucking in your stomach or sucking in your belly button. So that's the first thing you should know. You don't want to suck your belly button in, rather you want to actively stabilize and brace. And a verbal cue that I like to use is, it's like you're trying to show off a 6-pack, or if someone's about to punch you in the gut, you're stiffening your spine for that punch. So think about it that way. You're stabilizing and stiffening the spine, not sucking your belly button in. Tip number 2, let's talk about breathing. When it comes to breathing, it's going to be really dependent on the context of the activity you're engaging in, or maybe the weight that you're lifting, or the exercise maybe you're doing. But when it comes to breathing, think about it like this. If you take a deep breath in through your nose, and then you hold all that air in, and then you actively stabilize, like I mentioned in tip number 1, that's going to lead to more stabilization because now you're filling up any dead spaces with air, and that's going to help stabilization. Now, as soon as you breathe out, you lose a little bit of that stability that air has provided for you when you hold your breath. Now, someone that's maybe doing a heavy deadlift or a heavy squat, maybe that's where the application of something where you're taking a deep breath in and maybe holding it kind of on the way down to really provide maximal stabilization, like on a squat. That's where maybe a benefit would come from if you're lifting something very heavy, but it's really dependent on the task. But just keep in mind that with breathing, that when you take a big breath in, it's providing a little bit more stability because you're filling up your core. You think of your lungs and everything, and your whole body here with a little bit more air that's going to provide stability. But as soon as you breathe out, you're going to lose a little bit of that. You're going to lose that air and lose a little bit of that stability as you breathe out. So just keep in mind with breathing, but typically as a general rule, if you're lifting something very heavy, a maximal brace with breathing in and holding your breath would have its benefits in that context. Moving to tip number 3, avoid under bracing or over bracing. So a common issue is people don't know how to determine the magnitude of what or how forcefully they should brace during an activity. So for example, if you're lifting 400 pounds off the floor, like a 400-pound deadlift, you're going to want probably a maximal brace or close to a maximal brace. It's going to depend on the person, but that's a lot of weight you're lifting. Now, if you're lifting just a golf ball or a pen off the floor, probably don't really need much of a brace, and it's going to be a lot less. And the problem that people run into is they may over brace, so they may do a full brace on just picking up a pen, which is actually going to be counterproductive, and that's going to put extra and unnecessary force on the spine during that activity. Whereas if someone under braces on a very heavy lift, then the spine could, in a way, maybe create a little bit of a micro movement, and you might get a little bit of pain or something. An injury can occur because the spine is not stabilized, and you may lose form and technique. So you really want to determine, the key thing is, and it's going to just come by experience and listening to your body and understanding your body. And once you get the hang of properly bracing, you can then tailor your brace to the load or activity that you're engaging in. Just think of it this way though. The more load you're lifting or carrying, the greater the brace you'll need. The less load, the lower the brace that you will need or will require. So that's just a general kind of rule to follow. And if you need help with this, I would suggest you just go seek out a physical therapist, or a personal trainer or strength and conditioning coach that is competent with back pain and proper bracing, and they can help guide you through this process. And for my fourth and final tip is that we have to think of the core as everything from between our shoulders and hips. Often people will just think of their abdominals or the front of the core as the core itself, but that would be falling short. And we have to consider that our lats, our pecs, our glutes, our low back muscles, paraspinals, they're all important and they all support the core. So we have to think about actively bracing these muscles and understanding how to properly stabilize with these muscles when we're lifting a weight or maybe carrying something. Because depending on what the task is, these muscles will activate differently. But let's just use a deadlift as an example, which can have carryover to an everyday task where you're just picking up something from the floor. But when we consider a deadlift, we're gripping the bar tight with our wrists, our arms, we're locking our lats down, we're shrugging down to stabilize our upper back and into our mid and lower back. We're actively bracing the front of our core, our obliques, and at the same time, we're thinking about activating our glutes as well. And as we pull our hips forward, or when we lift the bar from the floor, our hips start to come through, and we're actively trying to squeeze our butt, pull our hips through, and we lift the bar up the floor. So when we think of the core, we're actively using all these muscles to support our spine. And we have to think about using those muscles and understanding how to use them properly and to train them as well properly, to have proper carryover to daily activities that will minimize the injury risk and take away pain. So the final point is think of the core as everything between the shoulders and the hips. And that's my fourth and final tip for you guys. Now, before we just wrap up this video, if you have any questions about core bracing, how to properly brace the core, please leave your questions below this video and I'll be happy to help you guys out with any questions you have. And also, just before I wrap this up, be sure to join the Facebook group, The Back Pain Warriors. There's a link in the description below that'll take you to the Facebook page. And be sure to join if you want more back pain tips. Okay, guys, so that is a wrap for this video. And until next time, have a wonderful, successful, and productive day. Take care.